It has been over 40 days since the death of Mahsa Amini in Iran. What started as a funeral protest has now ballooned into an anti-government movement. Protesters, along with Amini's family, held a memorial procession. Thousands of people were out in the streets displaying their anger. The visuals on your screens are coming from a western city in the Kurdistan province. This is Mahsa Amini's hometown. Some media agencies claim that about 10,000 people gathered at her grave. Soon after which clashes broke out and the police fired live rounds and tear gas. Authorities also cut off internet in the area. Amid these tensions, geopolitics is also at play. US has made a startling claim that Russia is advising Iran how to crack down on protesters. White House says Moscow is training the West Asian countries' police and officials. Similar anger towards the West is bringing Iran and Russia together. It is posing a threat not just for the United States but also for the protesters out on the streets.
We are concerned that Moscow may be advising Tehran on best practices to manage protests, drawing on Russia's extensive experience in suppressing open demonstrations.
Now for more on this, we are being joined by Rosana Isa from Malaysia. She's the Executive Director of Sisters in Islam. It is a civil society organization promoting the rights of women. Welcome to the broadcast. My first question to you is, protests have continued for over 40 days in Iran, but so has the crackdown. I want to ask you, has the government taken any concrete action against the morality police so far?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It is really unclear from any of the media reports whether any action has been taken, but there doesn't seem to be, if you look at what's happening on the ground and the escalation of the protests, any action to make the morality police accountable. Prior to this, if it hasn't been already done before this incident with Mahsa Amini, then it's unlikely that they have already done so for this particular case.
Now, you know, the protest has evolved from just an anti-hijab demand to minority groups also joining in the movement over their treatment by the government. I want to ask you, do you see any sign of change coming in Iran?
This is a very interesting development, but it's not surprising either because it's not just about the hijab. You know, there's a lot of public grievances, and there has been inputs by fellow Iranian activists who claim that, you know, there's a lot of political oppression that's going on. The people are facing economic hardship. There has been environmental disasters, discrimination against ethnic and religious minorities, the existence of corrupt and unrepresentative state institutions. And as we can see, you know, there's a lot of disrespect for the lives and dignity of the citizens. So I think it's a culmination of, you know, what has happened to Mahsa Amini. There's a lot of anger because there have been a lot of things that have been going on and have been largely unaddressed. Over time, I think there has been, you know, several developments politically that have seen more women, you know, taking part, and women's rights and their issues have been forwarded by candidates, presidential candidates. However, the conservative voices are really coming through and have opposed these very progressive and positive changes. So it's at a point where, you know, it's if this can happen to an average person, an average woman, your mother or your sister, who's just up and about, you know, doing her own thing, and she has been attacked in such a way and that has cost her life, then it really speaks to resonates to the rest of the Iranian citizens, because if it can happen to her, it can happen to any one of them.
Absolutely. Very interesting points made by you. Now, interestingly also that Washington has imposed new sanctions against Iran. The state government says that it is looking at all tools at its disposal. But I want to ask you, are sanctions the only last resort that the international community has against the Iranian government?
I think what the international community needs to do is also to figure out ways to find out how is it that the Iranian people can be brought to the table? What is it that they want? Sanctions do work, but only to a certain point and to the advantage of certain parties. But at the end of the day, it's the people on the ground who are the ones to suffer the most. And I think for the Iranian people, they would want to have a say if any kind of sanctions or any kind of moves or any kind of dialogue that is to be made with the Iranian government, then they would want to be there. And I think we should really give the power back to them. Any international community that is involved in addressing this should also give that power to the Iranian people to decide what is it that they want and how is it that they can get the Iranian government to listen to them.
Now, before I let you go, Rosanna, in a bizarre link, the Iranian president has blamed these protests for the terror attack that was done on one of its shrines, a Shia shrine. How do you assess this connection?
It's really difficult to do so at this point, but it can also be a distraction. There's a possibility that it's really to heighten the blame to the protesters. So, one way, because it may or may not be related, it is something that is very strange and bizarre. And of course, with the protests, that you do see a lot of anger that's being put out there, and how the public is reacting to this, it's really one that is something that's really difficult to read. At the end of the day, though, we have to go back to the root of why these protests begin in the first place. Why did it begin, and what is really wanted and needed by the Iranian people for all of this to be addressed.
All right. Thank you for all your insights, Rosanna. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.